Hello, welcome to week 7. This week I'm going to be talking about the article I read and in general just a little bit about building leadership and the impact that that has on student learning. So today you're going to hear me summarize the article that I read and discuss leadership strategies that I would use to lead the school sort of in this direction based off of this reading. So in summary, the article that I read was called Playmakers by Ihimoto, Taliaferro, and Adams. School leaders matter in motivating, attracting, developing, and retaining teachers. So principals sort of have an impact in and of themselves, but really their biggest impact is in hiring, developing, keeping staff happy, putting people in the right positions to like maximize leverage, and creating a school culture that's positive. Um, and principals can also lead by taking specific intentional actions to transform a school. Um, and we're going to talk really about sort of a 3-pillared approach, which is developing teachers, managing talent, and creating a great place to work. So that's like the broadest overview of the article, was that there's 3 major ways leaders can transform a building, and that's what the 3 things are. So I think it's helpful to see it in graphic representation. Um, so under developing teachers, sorry, my tech skills are not what they needed to be to do this very well. But so under developing teachers, you can see like leading group learning. That means the principal needs to have an active role in both planning and leading professional development. One thing that I loved about this article was this idea of the principal as the instructional leader. So we don't just want somebody with leadership skills, we want somebody who has a great understanding, who sees the whole field, who knows what play to call when, to use to continue with that sports analogy in Playmakers, um, but also someone who really is very knowledgeable about curriculum and instruction. So we want somebody who is getting their hands dirty and knows the nitty gritty of standards, knows different assessment techniques and strategies, knows about the best way to leverage like professional learning communities for student growth. We want somebody who can really be a coach and a leader in those areas. Under developing teachers, we're also looking for someone to create a climate of shared responsibility. So this is modeling and demanding really that teachers have high expectations for students and that every student is everybody's student. And it's not like, well, that's your kid. That shared ownership of student success. Um, then the PLC sort of overlaps between developing teachers and creating a great place to work, because in those professional learning communities, that's where staff are, they're planning together, they're building each other's capacity, they're learning from each other. It's a sense of community. When PLCs are going well and they are effective, it reduces the burden on staff. It helps people can sort of like take the planning piece that like best their strengths. People can learn new ideas from each other. So that's a really positive thing for both professional development, peer development, and also creating a positive work atmosphere. We'd also want to see a culture of respect and student code of conduct. If there's one thing I've learned from my years as a middle school teacher, is that teachers can't focus on academics if there are no systems in the school with consistent expectations and clear consequences. It doesn't need to be punitive, right? So it can be still a positive behavior construct where it's more about like putting in place behavior contracts, restorative justice. Those pieces can all be what your student code of conduct is, but you need to have some consistency and clear communication. Um, Sort of overlap between that and managing talent is individualized roles and responsibilities. So making sure people know who's in charge of what and giving teachers opportunity to, in the very center of all 3 of these, cultivate leadership, right? So instead of making all the decisions yourself, right? Delegating, allowing for allowing staff to give you feedback, giving opportunities, like identify people who are leaders and want to be leaders and develop them as professionals. Like create positions of leadership, ask for support in handling a building-wide initiative, right? So people are actually happier and feel that it's a better place to work and develop, and you're getting the most out of people, right? You want to get the most out of your staff by cultivating that leadership. Finally, under managing talent, we've got staff up. So like taking even little initiatives to hire staff early in the year as opposed to waiting, so you can definitely get the best staff that is available. Um, Tweaking your hiring process, assuring accountability, like making sure staff know what is expected of them and how to achieve that. And then finally, in the overlap to developing teachers is being, again, very hands-on with observations and with giving useful feedback. So once or more per month, principals need to be in classrooms observing. And again, it's not about that evaluation, although that's a piece of the puzzle. It's about giving actionable feedback. It's like the formative walkthrough idea of giving people something that they can use. So that's really like the summary of what this article found, the Playmakers article, was that these are like the 3 pillars of great principals. So a little bit more really quickly about each section. Under hiring, it's better to start with getting the right people in the first place, as opposed to trying to develop people who maybe at best will become mediocre. And the incredibly time consuming effort to get rid of people or to coach people who are really struggling, that can eat up all of a building's resources. Really, the focus needs to be proactive in hiring the right people from the beginning. I talked about creating opportunities for leadership, teachers, and roles strategically and intentionally. I loved hearing about, if you communicate with veteran teachers who are really effective about why you might ask them, instead of teaching the AP classes, to come down and teach the freshman algebra class as an equity move for your school, and then supporting them in that process. That's like a really positive leadership move. And you want to develop your teachers through professional development, those observations and feedback. And I'm really intrigued by this idea of peer coaching and peer to peer, sort of like developing together as teams or as colleagues. I think that's a really positive opportunity for schools. Under developing teachers, again, the principal should lead group learning based on those observations. So you're in classrooms all the time, very hands-on. You're in planning meetings with teachers, seeing how they run their PLCs and giving them feedback on that process. Then you know what are the group learning that needs to happen in your building. You also want to create a climate of shared accountability for student success, high expectations and hard work, provide leadership opportunities early enough, and use peer capacity building through peer walkthroughs, video reflections, through collaborative team meetings, and to sort of be a facilitator of that along the way. And to create a great place to work, clear expectations of staff. You want to build trust. You want collaboration. You want to delegate. Simple things like just celebrating success. Teaching is hard. So pausing to say thank you to staff, celebrate the small wins every day. Again, ensuring those systems are in place for behavior, and say yes when you can to teacher preference, right? Sometimes if it's just like a teacher requesting a certain room that makes them happy, or if you don't have a good reason to switch a teacher from working with a friend, leave it. Like, let people have small, just like moments of you saying yes, or small moments of power to make a great place to work. So overall, as a leader, it's about investing in staff, peers, building each other's capacity. Certainly as a principal, I want to be the instructional leader, but peers can learn so much from each other. I love this idea of capacity building. If the ESL teacher and the special education teacher are really there in those planning meetings, they can help suggest scaffolds and ideas to make an activity accessible to language learners or to special education students that maybe that classroom teacher could use in the future. So always just filling people's toolboxes and making sure that people are learning from each other. I'd love to do, I think I talked about this later, but walkthroughs where peers observe each other. As a principal, needing to be like very present in the planning of instruction, present in classrooms, and just leading that culture of learning and collaboration by modeling it, by having clear expectations that that's what will be what's happening. And with this focus on teacher effectiveness, the school will improve for everyone. So as the leader, it's really about the efficacy of your teachers. But again, with that, even one step further, it's really about students and observing our students learning, what are students getting out of a particular class. So to sort of get to the second piece of like, what are my moves or my leadership strategies to make this happen? My district and most across Wisconsin, maybe all, has an achievement and opportunity gap for Black, Brown, and Indigenous students. So what would my moves be? We need sustained professional development around race identity, and we need to build teachers' cultural competence. We have schools where we only have one staff of color, and our student population is about 20% staff of color. So we need our white teachers to be doing their own identity work. We also need to hire and mentor staff of color. I did a bunch of research in my work with the Dane County Equity Consortium about what works to hire and retain staff of color, because that's such an important indicator for student success. So think like programs like Grow Your Own. We need systemic change to make school a better place for people of color. Change the culture and climate. Partner with the university. Think about our hiring practices and removing barriers to retention. So those are all things that I would want to implement as a building leader. Diverse book opportunity for staff. So leading book groups, maybe it's not me, maybe it's the reading specialist, but like having middle school teachers for professional development credits, read a bunch of diverse books, diverse protagonists at their level, discuss them, think about how they would use them in the classroom, is a really positive move. A book club for staff reading. Right now we're reading Cultivating Genius by Gholdy Muhammad, but there's plenty of great books about how to be more culturally responsive. We need to revisit our grading practices, revisit the code of conduct and behavior response, being more proactive, not exclusionary. And we need to look at our equity audit data and set goals for improving our, in particular, AP participation of students of color. So another area of need for our district is refocusing PLCs, our professional learning committees. Like we really want these to be proactive and not just like the classroom homeroom teacher plans and then the special ed teacher like does a pull-out group. So we need to reground in our equitable best practices. As the leader, I would observe PLCs and give feedback. We've got an awesome form that I helped develop that walks through the planning process and just like a way for me to observe what we are hoping to see and then give some feedback. So have they reviewed the norms of collaboration? Does the team have a clear defined purpose? Is the right work being done ahead of the meeting versus during the meeting? So that's sort of a flow chart that I would observe to give feedback. Creating systems for peer observations and walkthroughs, including providing subs to relieve staff so that they could go watch really great teachers teach and debrief. Using video of both teaching or recorded planning conversations and providing time for reflection. Using a consultancy protocol for teachers to problem solve instructional challenges. That would be like a PD day, letting teachers sort of build each other's capacity and model asset-based thinking and high expectations. I think I picked 3, so let's hope this is my last one. Facilitate a shift in standards-based grading and equitable grading practices. So to do that, I would lead professional development on equity and grading, including the what, why, how, and when of the shift. Probably another book study with maybe a title we've referenced previously in this class. Work with grade level leaders to create a timeline for implementation and get feedback. Present that to the school board and create communication to families about the change, that everybody understands what we're doing and why we're doing it. So my references today are just the Playmakers article, How Great Principals Build and Lead Great Teams of Teachers. And those are sort of my action areas for my district and what I would do about them. So that is both number 1, the summary, and number 2, the strategies facing our challenges today. Thanks.